Hey, good morning. My name is Jesus Pereira. I'm the Superintendent of the Veterans Assistance Commission of Winnebago County. And I had a lot of you, thankfully, come out and talk to me about the budget for the Veterans Assistance Commission, what's been going on for fiscal year 2025, and help me understand that there's been some misinformation being put out there in the general community thanks to one of our former employees. So I decided to take some time to make a video and share with everyone what the overall situation is with the Veterans Assistance Commission. So first, let's start with what the VACWC actually is. For the longest time, folks believed that the VAC was like a member organization, kind of like the American Legion, VFW, and the likes. And we're not. We're actually a unit of government, just like your towns and your cities and townships, as identified in Article 7 of the Constitution of Illinois. And we're here specifically to provide assistance for veterans and their families. The one thing that we don't have as a VAC and as a unit of government is the ability to levy funds. So we're not allowed to levy taxes or create a revenue stream to the general public in that manner. So that responsibility is given to the county. And so the county can fund the VAC through one of three manners. And that could be through a tax levy on your property. It could be done through the general fund or funds through the state. Now, that then begs the question, who determines what the budget for a VAC is? And it's been very clear for many years that the VAC determines what the budget is for its operations, because it's the veterans who actually oversee the operations of the VAC. The VAC nominates delegates and alternates from each member organization within the county. So all the VFWs, American Legions, and other organizations that are congressionally chartered or state chartered select a delegate and an alternate to become the commission, and they in turn are the legislative body for the VAC. They are the ones who vote for the final budget for the VAC. So they would know the best out of anyone else what the community needs. They're members of the community, they live in the community, they can determine whether the community needs transportation services, VA disability compensation services, financial assistance services. And, Winnebago County actually has one of the more generous financial assistance programs, and historically has had a pretty challenging reputation, and we've been working to change that. The veteran to VSO ratio has been well over 5,000 to 1 for the longest time, and that's pretty tough. Some of our smaller communities who have 2 or 3 VSOs are under 1,000 to 1. And even if we do have 4 VSOs on staff, we're still over 5,000, well, just under 5,000 to 1. So that's something to think about. But back to the budget. The budget for the VAC is determined by, is preset by myself. I'm the superintendent. This year specifically is the first budget that I put together. And some of the new things that came up this year that was not there before was the VAC used to only work 35 or 30 hours a week. We went to 40 hours a week. They historically did that because they didn't pay benefits to their employees. It was put into law that we shall pay employees benefits. And so for the first time, it was actually put in, not that it wasn't a requirement, it always was, but apparently a lot of VACs, especially this one, weren't paying their employees benefits. So they didn't have health care and dental and some other things. And we ended up putting that into our budget for this year. Now that number is about $25,000 or so for just the healthcare alone, plus taxes and IMRF. So that pushes it to about $30,000 or so, or a little bit more. And Uh, we ended up going full time, and then making our salaries is the budget. So budgeting is obviously a future projection of what you're going to do, and what you're planning on doing. And so we planned for 9 employees, which we had at one point, and all full time. And one of them was a full time driver for our local transportation program. On top of that, we understood that historically we lost veteran service officers to usually the state veteran service officer equivalent to us, which is IDVA. They have a great employment team. They have a great team. Provide great services as well, and we wanted to be competitive with them in salaries. So we brought up our salary within the range of theirs. I'm not going to say it's identical, but it's competitive with theirs. So that brought up our salary range to about 55 to 75 for a veteran service officer. Now, when I got there were folks that were making 14 bucks an hour, some under 20. And imagine that type of salary working 30 hours a week. It's tough to make a living that way, especially with no benefits. And then you also get only a certain type of talent for that kind of salary. A certain type of commitment from employees as well. So when we were able to consider moving forward with these salary ranges, I put it into the budget, and that's what we move forward with as far as the salary goes. And then for programming, the first year that I was here, the first full cycle, we used about $500,000 in financial assistance for veterans. So we had that historical data to use. We planned to move out of our location. The law says the county shall provide us with a location for us to use. Basically out of the county's funds to pay for us. But we rapidly outgrew our space. Mostly our challenge comes when if we have 4 VSOs and all 4 VSOs are with clients, one of our offices is co-shared with 2 VSOs, and if one VSO is with the client and another VSO is with a client, you can overhear conversations, and those are private conversations that shouldn't be overheard. You shouldn't be eavesdropping or hearing other conversations. So we worry about violating HIPAA in those private conversations. On top of that, we have community partners that come in and share space with us, and we collaborate with them. And we didn't have space for them, and we would have them out in the open, and that's not the type of environment we want to have for them. On top of that, we couldn't have meetings. We don't have a conference space there, so we were looking for a bigger space. The type of support we're trying to give the community, we just can't give with the space that we have. Some other things that we look to do this fiscal year is what we planned for was to do mailers. So our postage, we put a sizable amount of postage in there because we know that people respond to mailers, especially those of the older generation. And our Vietnam veterans and Gulf War forward are our biggest population. And it's just, there was a lot of plans on outreach. And the reason why we're looking at outreach is because there's some statistics that we all really should just look at. One is Winnebago County is 96 out of 102 counties in VA disability compensation utilization, meaning that out of all the counties, we're at the bottom in receiving service connection disability compensation for our veterans. That's not a great number. The average county has about 24% of its population or veteran population receiving disability compensation. We're at 19. So we started Operation 540. We're trying to get 540 veterans who've never been service connected, which means they're being compensated for injuries or illnesses that they incurred while in service. It's a significant impact to the community, and let me tell you why. Between 2013 and 2023, Winnebago County lost 6,200 veterans. In that span of time, in 10 years, that had a $2 billion economic impact in Winnebago County. The disability compensation payments that those veterans were receiving the work that they would have performed in the community, the money that they would have spent in the economy went elsewhere. And um, veterans are leaving. So we had over 21,000 veterans. We're at 15 or so. We got to do something about keeping our veterans here. Now, Illinois, as a total, was 52nd out of 54 or 55 territories. And this is something that was put out there by, there was a public act a few years ago where they put together a task force. And now this task force had veteran service officers, they had the director of IDVA, the assistant director of IDVA, some state reps. And within the first couple paragraphs of the report, they noted that, yeah, Illinois falls on the bottom of this. Now they attributed part of it to transition out of military service and whether or not certain transition programs are working. But I would also say, coming from another state, is that we as veteran service officers and VACs, we weren't doing a very good job of creating a good veteran experience for veterans who came into our offices. We weren't knowledgeable. We didn't have tools, electronic tools for things like record retrieval. When I arrived here in Illinois, we were manually requesting records from National Archives and waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get the records back. We are government. We should be able to press a button and get it back within minutes. We do have a good relationship with IDVA, and we can get most of DD-214s back in a short period of time, as long as the person entered or left from Illinois. But service records, we don't have access to DPRIS or any other repository where we can get items quickly. So we're working towards figuring that out, and that's not something that we want veterans to have to deal with when they come see us. We want to be able to provide services quickly and in a much better manner. Now, when I also got here, our VSOs didn't have access to VA data. None of them had PIV cards. None of them had access to VA infrastructure at all. They would file claims, fill out a piece of paper, and they would run blind. I made it a requirement that everyone pass a background check, get cards, and get access to the VA infrastructure, so they could see the information as far as someone's claim as it was going through the process. And that's the type of service that we should be offering our veterans. As far as keeping VSOs and all that, it requires training, which then requires money. And the best thing you can do is get VSOs around other VSOs from around the country who practice this every day and who can teach you best practices, which then comes down to training and traveling and getting folks, one, to keep their accreditation up with their CEUs and everything else. So that's why we had a sizable amount of money for travel and education and so on and so forth. So with that all said, we ended up with a $1.6 million budget last year, and we submitted that. Well, first it went to our finance committee, and then from finance committee it went to the full body of the VAC. It was approved. It was voted on by the full body and then sent to the Winnebago County Board, or to the Winnebago County CFO. From there, and that was in May 30th or so, all the way through September. In the between that time frame, there were informal conversations about it, but there was never a formal invite or conversation to have the VAC come talk to the board about the budget. I was never invited to discuss anything about the budget. The county took it upon themselves to just award their 1.1, slightly 1.2, with some money that was left over for the operations. Now, they broke that money down into two categories, one for personnel and then one for, call it, operations. And they put something north of $700,000 into personnel and then $380 something into veterans benefits. Well, we had requested $875,000 for our operations, $500,000 of that being for veterans benefits or financial assistance. So we're $500,000 short just in operations right there. And we knew back then that we would have a challenge making it through the year, especially with the plans that we had. Um, this is where the problem all lies. The stories that you've heard online, and a lot of the news outlets have gotten the story really wrong a lot of the time, is that the VAC, um, with our budget, would require us to, will require the county to increase taxes in order to fund us. Now, that's not true. When I started this, I said that the VAC could be funded through a tax levy, um, through the general fund, or through the state. Now, you could also use a combination of all that. And when we were prepping the supplemental budget request, we found $6 million in supplies and services in the county's budget between last year and this year. So the new budget had almost $6 million in new requests. So that's to say that they were willing to fund those things, but not the services for veterans in Winnebago County and the salaries and benefits for the employees of the VAC. That's challenging, right? So the other thing too is, even if the county decided to do a new levy, we put a calculator up on our website, and my particular home, if I were to pay taxes on it, it has a $52,000 taxable amount. It's like $15 a year. It's a $15,000 a year cost to run the VAC with 9 employees, fully benefited, $500,000 of financial assistance available, and full-time driver and everything else. Of course, you can just scale that based off of the taxable value of your home. But the way that I see it is, I don't think you even need to levy the general public for that. I think that's just an excuse. So that's something to think about. So the truth of the matter is I don't think you need to tax the general public at all. The VAC was never invited to talk about the budget. The VAC creates and determines the budget. The county funds, and if the county feels that the budget may be too much, they're supposed to formally return it, and they never did. But our employees, dollar for dollar, are still cheaper than a lot of the departments in the county side. We had 9 employees, and our salaries were a little bit over $500,000. There's departments with 5-6 people on the county side that's north of that. So, dollar for dollar, we return money back into the community. We just celebrated $2 million of VA claims being closed by the VAC, and that's just going to keep growing up. Every time we represent a claimant and we close a VA claim, that brings money back into the community. They bring in, that person gets VA disability compensation, that's tax-free benefit from the federal government, that's bringing federal dollars back into the community. They get VA health care, so now they have access to health care. And not only that, but they might have access now to education benefits and so on. So the value and return on investment for the work that we do is there. We're one of the we're one of the agencies in government that actually returns money back to the community. So I encourage everyone who's out there to take the time, go through our website, ask the questions. You can reach out to me directly if you have any questions, but I'll do my best to share as much as I can. It's all on our website. The last thing I'll say is that a lot of people are talking about the lawsuit. Now, the lawsuit is probably not what you think. It's not a nefarious act. It's actually something that's codified in law. It's spelled out black and white in 330 ILCS 45. It says that the VAC shall ask for just and necessary funds, and if the county decides not to fund that, then we shall we have to file in a circuit court request for relief by mandamus. And all that is just saying, hey, judge, why don't you look at this and determine whether or not what we asked for was just and necessary, and force the county to give us those funds. So that's what's upcoming. I think we have a hearing on the 15th of May, and we'll see what happens from there. I'm sure it'll take some time before it's over, but In the meantime, I just wanted to share that information with you. I thank you all. If you have questions, you can email me at jpereira@vac.wincoil.gov. Thanks. Have a good one.